Is Resident Evil 4 bad? I've recently started playing through the Resident Evil series, starting with 1, 0, 2 Remake, and then 3 Remake. Aside from playing 0 after 1, I've been trying to play the numbered Resident Evil games in order, which of course meant Resident Evil 4 was next. With Resident Evil 4 Remake on the horizon, I had an interesting choice: play the original Resident Evil 4, or wait for the remake. I figured I'd start with the original, so when Remake did come out, I could compare them, as I hadn't had that experience with the other games yet. That was a huge mistake. Resident Evil 4 is considered one of, if not the best game in the series, and I hated it. Like a lot. Like a lot. I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, "Heretic, how could you hate such a perfect game?" Well, let me tell you why I hate it. The technical issues. Volume sliders, non-existent. Subtitles, purely decorative. 60 FPS, great until you get into a QuickTime event which can't be beaten unless you switch back to 30 frames per second. I'm sure some people give these issues a pass because it's an old game or say there are mods to resolve these issues, but my response to that is they shouldn't sell a game if it's broken, or they should update it themselves. The story. Resident Evil games are pretty wacky, and this one is no exception. In fact, I'd say it's too wacky. The plot of this game literally kicks off because an evil mind control parasite cult in Spain kidnaps the president's daughter. It's quite a departure from an evil pharmaceutical company ruining Raccoon City and the surrounding areas and then blowing it up. To be fair, everything blows up in Resident Evil 4 too. Maybe it was just hard for me to enjoy the story between shooting 300 enemies and then FaceTiming the villains. I just wish that Resident Evil 4 was more infected sharks kind of wacky instead of giant robot wacky. The bosses in this game are also a bit too goofy for my liking. The worst of which is Krauser, who comes out of nowhere and is an absolute loser. He loses every single fight he's in, gets cut once and decides to become Rambo, and he powers up and gets a knife arm to be even edgier than he was before. Also, I can't even explain why they bothered even putting Ada into this game. Like, I understand she's there to flirt with Leon and to get a sample, but she feels so pointless. She meets up with Leon at one point, wearing a pair of sunglasses she only has for that cutscene. She fights Leon for 2 seconds, says she's a villain, obviously, and uses her glasses, which are actually a smoke bomb, to escape. Literally, this entire scene didn't have to happen. Much like the scenes of her saving Leon from Menendez and Krauser. Seeing how Leon manages to beat both of them by himself later under the same, if not harder, circumstances, it feels like he's only in danger here, so Ada has a reason to show herself. At least she's not as bad as Ashley. She's the president's daughter, and the reason you're here in the bright and sunny land of Spain. She's also super annoying. 90% of her dialogue is screaming, "Leon, help!" And whenever she's with you, she requires your constant protection from everything. She's literally so useless, she gets captured by a wall. Like an actual wall. Mike is more of a likable character than her. But unfortunately, the worst thing about her is the creators of the game. The creepy stuff. If you've played a Resident Evil game before, then you've seen some pretty strange, perverted, and sexist stuff. Resident Evil 4 doesn't shy away from doing this pretty blatantly using Ashley. As in, you can see up her skirt in many of the cutscenes she's in. The camera angles aren't the only thing sexualizing her. Cue Luis casually introducing himself to Ashley but talking about her ballistics. I think what makes this the worst case so far in the entire series is it's throughout the entire game, and it's specifically directed towards a young and mostly defenseless character. There's also this cutscene where Ada does a flip, and despite the camera angle, somehow doesn't manage to reveal anything close to what happens to Ashley. I wonder if it's not exploitative because Ada isn't defenseless. Sort of backs up my point, huh? Extras. After beating the main story, several additional modes become available. The first I tried was Mercenaries, which is an arcadey type mode that didn't appeal to me and had no story, so I played 2 rounds and never went back. I had no opinion. The other modes, Separate Ways and Assignment Ada, were both okay at best. The worst things about them is that they're short, they mostly take place in slightly reworked areas of the main story, and worst of all, they both bring back Krauser. Also, Assignment Ada isn't canon. Not that it would make sense for it to be canon, but I'm not that far into the series, and playing non-canon side stories where you shoot even more enemies than you would normally has already gotten pretty old. Speaking of getting old, I gotta talk about Leon. I've already mentioned that I feel like the tone of the previous games don't match the levels of wacky as RE4, and that extends my feelings about Leon. Sure, it's been around half a decade between the events of RE2 and RE4, but seeing Leon in RE2 Remake as a young rookie who wants to do the right thing and save people, to becoming a roundhouse kicking, sarcastic.
I'm sure you boys didn't just tag along so we could sing Kumbaya together at some Boy Scout bonfire.
Sexist.
Women.
Kinda racist? Flirty action hero.
You know you're kinda cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
Who calls people bro.
Bro.
And who thinks he's so fucking cool. In RE4, it feels like too drastic of a change. He's just not my Leon. So, is Resident Evil 4 bad? No, I don't think so. It's not even my least favorite Resident Evil game. I think it's just not what I wanted from a Resident Evil game. While I'm sure going from the much newer Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes to a much older Resident Evil 4 affect my opinion a bit, I think the increased focus on it being more of an action-y game that embraces all the franchise's qualities, even the goofy and bad ones, while slowly abandoning its survival horror roots just doesn't do it for me. Which is fine, people love this game, and the choice paid off, at least initially. So yeah, I should have probably waited for 4 Remake. So there would have been a bit more consistency going from Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake to 4, and hopefully to have avoided some of the technical issues at least. But it's always good to give games a chance. And knowing that 5 and 6 continue the actiony trend set by 4, it's good to know what I'm getting myself into as I continue with the franchise. But you should play both, make your own decision, you know?
Where's everyone going? Bingo?